Song for the Imps. How about a song for the Imps? There we go then. Come on, let's get some of that together. Let's have a go at the Imps song, yeah. Okay, yeah, all right. Go on, fellas. Get around the piano. Let's have a good go. Come on, then. Are you ready? Come on, you lot. Go on, then.
Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Lincoln City are the team, the Reds is their name. Stinsel Bank is their home ground and football is their game. So come and cheer them on, you lads, support them all the way. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our...
Morning, everyone. What a fantastic morning it is as well up here in the Lincolnshire Wolds. And I'm able to get a little bit of a cheeky dog walk out. So I'm home alone this weekend. Fee's at a music festival. It's an odd about turn. It's normally me that's out watching gigs around the country. So she's out. So I've had a nice full English at home. I'm now enjoying the beauty of the countryside with a dog who actually looks quite willing to walk. And I was just perusing my phone and enjoying the atmosphere when I got hit by something that I forget about when it's not transfer window. When the transfer window's closed, it's a blissful ignorance. And then as soon as the transfer window opens or retained lists start coming out, they come back. Like a pollen count in the summer. You know what I mean? Like mosquitoes in a warm country, just taking the shine off of everything positive. And I am, of course, talking about ex-agent accounts. Now, I use the words ex-agent accounts, kind of also mean in the know EFL news accounts that essentially make news up on Twitter and get away with it. And it drives me crazy because you can't Twitter note them particularly because they may well be correct, but a lot of the time it's just utter guff. It really is. And I felt I had to do a quick video mainly because I kind of, it's the only way I think that the dog will walk if I'm talking into the phone. He doesn't stop and sniff everything, so it's a good way to get around. If the wind is too much, by the way, please let me know. It's quite windy up here, certainly windier than I thought that it was when I first started doing the video. So a good reputable Twitter account this morning, Imps Focus, which I like, retweets a lot of news, some that I miss as well. A good account has retweeted an ex-agent account, and with reason. They've argued, they've said quite sensibly that this account got something right in the past, and so they are using it this time. And if this turns out not to be true, then they won't use it again, and that's fair enough. That's fair enough. I think I had a similar experience with an ex-agent quite a few years ago now, which actually turned out to be a fake account, which was absolutely hilarious because they had about 5,000 followers and they were being used as a reputable source on several sites. And then when it actually came down to it, they admitted they were just a guy in their bedroom making it up, which was absolutely hilarious. Now, you might think, let them have their fun, these accounts. You might think, what harm are they doing? They're sparking a little bit of conversation and debate when, at the moment the club are pretty tight-lipped about who it is they're interested in, who it is they're looking at. For all we know, they're looking at some, Scandinavian striker we've never heard of. And certainly when you look at some of the players that we've signed in the past, the likes of, Lewis Monsma completely came out of the blue. It's hard to actually predict, not like kind of 7-8 years ago where you knew more or less what sort of player was on Danny Cowley's shopping list. And I think it's been proven, the article that Chris did, and there are more to follow, of potential signings, very good, but a lot of it is speculation. In Chris's instance, he's not saying we're going to sign those players. He's saying these are the type of players that absolutely fit our profile. That's speculation with substance. It's speculation with purpose. And there's a lot of those scouting accounts at the moment that do that sort of thing. There's a guy called Heath I really like, HC, I think he is on Twitter. Tom Williams is really good. He deals predominantly with the National League. And that's a really good way of keeping in touch with players, finding out kind of what they're about. I like that. That's what Twitter should be for. It shouldn't be for retweeting utter shit, made up stuff. And that's what these EFL ex-agents do. And every year it grates me because it's guesswork, or it's really easy to do. Now I'll give you like a glimpse behind the curtain almost. Obviously, I've been involved over the years with the real EFL. And on a site like that, you're always looking for exclusives. You're always looking for what's called the writer's opinion at the end of a piece. So if you do news and you're on news now, and the news that you're getting is essentially news that's already out there, you have to add something that adds value. So at the real EFL, we have to add the writer's opinion, the writer's view. And writing that means you have to have an opinion on everything that you report. Now, that's virtually impossible. Gab Sutton does a very good job of having an opinion on as much as possible. But I'm a Lincoln fan. I don't want to have to keep across the Championship League Two in any depth. But it's easy to create an opinion. It's easy to then look at a player, look at a news report, look at something and create an opinion. That player would fit Crewe because he's worked under their manager before, that sort of thing. The same works with rumours. It's easy to create a rumour. So, for instance, any ex-agents worth their salt now will be talking about Colchester desperately eyeing a move for Sean Raggett, but they're going to be fighting several League One clubs. It's a credible rumour because Sean Raggett is a free agent. He's worked with Danny Cowley before. Colchester's in the general area where he's from, but he's also going to be looked at by League One clubs because he's just won the title with Portsmouth. You could then go a little further with another tweet on the back of that saying Colchester looks set to miss out on Sean Raggett as the race for his signature hot in League One. Right, two pieces of really credible news that I've literally just made up right now, made up, done and dusted. Don't know anything about Sean Raggett's situation at all. If I was an ex-agent and I put that out on my Twitter, people would look and go, actually, that's quite a credible rumour. I can see that happening. More so than the one that's got me annoyed this morning, Lincoln looking at Charlie Lakin, I think, who's a Burton player who's been on loan in League Two. Not saying it's not going to happen. It might happen, might make me look like a complete knob. But it's not that particular one. It's the general kind of gist of it. Now, let's say I put that Sean Raggett story out and Colchester fans read it and believe what I'm saying. And then Sean Raggett signs for, off the top of my head, Tranmere, where he was going the day that we dragged him across to Lincoln City all those years ago. The next thing you know, Colchester fans are saying, well, we missed out on one of our targets. Now, did they? Because an ex-agent said that they were looking at him? Absolutely not. Absolutely not correct. And that, I think, then creates a degree of unfair negativity. Now, if a Darren Whitcoop or a Pete O'Rourke or an Alan Nixon put something out there, you tend to believe it a little bit more. Journalists have contacts. Let me ask you this. Why would an ex-agent still have contacts, and instead of using that to get himself back into agency work or selling the stories to newspapers or creating a website like the Real AFL where they could break exclusives and earn money from it, why would they put it out on Twitter in a poorly spelled tweet, often grammatically incorrect? It just doesn't interest me. And there's some interesting comments here. One from M, which I quite like this. Speculation and transfer rumours, interests are always interested and keep us ticking over the summer. Yep, they do. Transfer rumours do, but they've got to be credible. They've got to be from somewhere. They've got, in my opinion, they've got to be from a news agency, making stuff up for people to then talk about as, is this real? Oh man, I don't know. It just really grates on me. I would rather somebody came to me and said, such and such is free. He was here before. Such and such is free. He was with Skubala at Leeds. Create something from substance and not pretend that you're in the know. Creating and making things up and pretending that you're in the know is false representation and fake news. It really winds me up. And Nick Gilliver in football media, the method these days seems to be say everything and on a little you'll be right. Yeah, it does. Like the Premier League, it does. And a lot of football media is basically like news aggregation these days. It's one story sparks 20 stories. And I obviously I know that the Real AFL kind of does that. Football League World does that. The 72 does that. You know, loads and loads of places do it. I see stories on Goal, for instance, which have come to me through a PR campaign that even I won't touch. Just got onto 5G. I've never had 5G up here. Um, they come through email, and there's just a desperation to put more and more news out because you get paid per click, you get paid per view. Now, we're quite lucky at the Real AFL because what we do, we've got a good team of writers who can add a good valued writer's opinion. And we've got 3 writers, soon to be 4, who are members of the Football Writers Association. And we've got people who are now in regular contact with agents. And agents are very careful about the story they put out. They don't tell their mate who used to be an ex-agent so he can stick it out on Twitter. It's just a scourge. Now, I don't know how many of you remember what I term as one of the first ex-agents, and I know for a fact Andy Pearson, probably not watching, he'll remember this guy. And it was a fascinating kind of trajectory that this guy went on, because he claimed to be an ex-agent, and he got quite a bit right, to a point where it was almost like, actually, this guy might be credible. I can't remember any specific stories, to be fair, but there was some around Lincoln. There was a lot around League One and League Two. But people, I remember, would ask him things like, have you got any stories on Mansfield? And he'd be like, oh no, I don't just put stories out there for no reason. That's a red flag. If you say, got anything on Lincoln, and they come back and go, oh, Lincoln are interested in such and such, made up. But then this guy kind of, I think he got to about 5,000 followers, and then he disappeared for a while. And then somebody sent me a screenshot, because I blocked him. I block all these accounts. And somebody sent me a screenshot where he actually was admitting that he was a guy in his bedroom, just a football fan, making stuff up, creating credible rumours so he would look at a player, where that player had been before, where he was logistically, and having a bit of a guess. And educated guesses come out better than stuff that have been made up. I don't really know what the moral of the story is here. I just really wanted to have a little bit of a rant about ex-agents and that kind of EFL news and EFL hub on Twitter. See, Twitter's good and bad. I like Twitter because it's a great way to stay in touch with people, football fans. It is a great way to get quick bits of news. It's a great way to aggregate actual news. But it's also a lazy way around actually putting the work in as a journalist. There's people on Twitter now who claim to be football journalists who don't write a word other than in 144 characters or whatever. And look, football media, football journalism, reputable football journalism is at a real crossroads at the moment. So you've got one really positive angle, which is you get some great direct fan-driven content. And balanced fan-driven content is as good as any content you'll see. And I'm thinking, obviously kind of people put the Stacey West in that, but I put things like Salopcast in that from Shrewsbury, really good. People will shoot me down for this one, but DN35, Grimsby, really good. These are people that can be critical of their team. They're not sensationalist. They'll be a little partisan at times, just like I am, because you expect that. But on the whole, you get a good balance from them. And they're across the whole of the Football League. That's great, because it means then that when Lincoln City go into like the FA Cup 5th round or whatever, we're not having to just read the lazy journalism from a red top kind of sensationalizing it. You can really drill down and get some proper insight into what that team are doing. And they've all got them. When we played Chippenham, we found a Chippenham fan to give us that level of insight. I love that aspect of football media. But then there's the other aspect of football media, which is the written word, which is actual news, general news. And that's the one that's at a real crossroads, because a lot of people now, a lot of kind of journalists are just pumping, or ex-agents are pumping stuff out on Twitter, and that gets classed as news. And it makes it quite hard for the likes of myself and other people who are in the industry to pick up what is news and what isn't news. You have to know who to trust and who not to trust. Like some journalists recently, reputable journalists, have just been rehashing stuff from 3 or 4 weeks ago and classing it as exclusives, or they drag stories back out because they get paid per click. It's why the Echo died, because with the greatest respect, the Echo really went downhill, and often people would blame the journalist. And myself and Mark Wiley did not see eye to eye, by the way, at all. We had quite a interesting email exchange towards the end of his time at the club, but he was having to just get clicks on his stories all the time, so he had to write sensationalist stuff. He had to start speculating whether Brennan Johnson would be recalled in September, because he knew that would get clicks. So he had to do it in order to pay his way and pay his. Do you know what I mean? And that's how kind of reach has gone. That's why local media has died. That's why you can't go and pick up your Echo every day now and read a story on the back of it. And technology has kind of undermined that anyway, because why would you buy an Echo to read a story that had developed at lunchtime, when online that story's developed at lunchtime and you've already read it, and you've already digested it, and you've already reacted to it, and I've already done a video on it, and everybody else has already had their say on Twitter? Why would you then go and buy the Echo to read it? You wouldn't. So I kind of understand why it's dying out localized. But at the same time, that eagerness for news, that desperation for clicks, leads to the likes of the EFL agents. I don't even, going back to them, I don't even know what they fucking get out of it. Like, there's one with 400 followers. He's tweeting lies to his 400 followers, hoping that one of his 10, 15, 20 a day hits. And I've seen them where they'll put something out, because I'll bookmark some, the ones that I don't block, and they'll put something out on Twitter, and then I'll go back to it when it's wrong and it's been deleted. And so you can create your own narrative. Look how popular I am. Look how accurate I am. 90% of what I say comes out all right, when actually it doesn't. You just whitewash it. Word from Nick. Do you think news regarding League One and League Two will get better with the new EFL TV deal? No, I don't. I think I don't understand how it gets better, to be honest. Look, when I say that, I'm probably doing it a little bit of disservice, because I'm not saying that news and opinion at this level is bad. I'm saying that there is a really kind of rubbish element, like the Sun newspaper, but in 144 characters on Twitter or whatever. Whereas actually, there's some really good media at the moment goes out around League One and League Two. They're not the top 20 podcast. It's good. I really liked D3, D4 before it went under. Something that at the Real EFL we tried to replicate this year. We didn't quite get it right, but we'll be working on sort of new, fresh content next year. So there's plenty of good content. The issue is around transfers for me, and transfer rumours. That's the hardest. And it isn't easy. Look, I'll tell you what, guys. I'll tell you a story. There's 33 of you online at the minute. Saturday lunchtime, so thank you for giving up the time to watch. Let me tell you a story about Sean Raggett. And this is kind of related and kind of not, but I picked it up with the Imps in Focus guy on Twitter a minute ago, because as soon as you put something out there, so like, he's a good guy, decent account, but as soon as he puts something out there from an EFL agent, he's endorsing it essentially. So you're endorsing something, and then people can come at you and have a go. They don't blame the agent, they blame you because you've retweeted it. And I had it once, retweeting something, I can't remember what it was, but it was a political thing that I'd liked, that had a political undertone, kind of against the army, which obviously I'm not. My brother was in the army, but it had this political undertone I hadn't spotted. And at that point, the tweet wasn't the problem, I was the problem. And I got that. That's understandable. I'm careful now. So this is one example of how the news can kind of backfire on you, because I was at an open day, summer of 2017 this is. So the site has been going for a year and a bit. Sorry, I can't get out of the sun. So the site's been going for a year and a bit at the time. And I was trying to do it full time. I don't do mine full time. I would love to. I'd love to do Lincoln stuff every single day. It would be brilliant. Do the news, go to the press conferences, all that. But unfortunately, there just isn't the market for it. Anyway, so I went there with my laptop, and we did this fans forum, and it was a closed fans forum for just a selection of us. And Bob and Roger took the fans forum, and somebody asked the question of Bob about Sean Raggett, because he was meant, he had a great season with us, and there was a lot of talk about him leaving. And Bob said at the time, we've had interest in Sean Raggett, it's likely that he's going to leave. I've got my laptop with me. So immediately after the fans forum, I did the story on it. Now, that was perhaps wrong. It wasn't an open forum, but it wasn't a private conversation in a pub, so it was in a grey area. Then what we got to do was go into a press conference, and it was up in the boardroom. And I remember going into the press conference, and it always sticks with me. I think Lucy and Sam Ray were in there as well. I didn't know them particularly at the time. And halfway through, Sean Raggett came in, or at the beginning, I can't remember. He came in, and I heard it. He was raging because he wanted to know how this story had broken, that he was leaving, because I'd put it out there And then news aggregators like the 72 or whatever had got hold of it and were now quoting me saying Sean Raggett was definitely leaving Lincoln City. And at the time, there was, I understand the conversations with Norwich were advanced, but it hadn't got out there. And he came into this press conference, and I remember Alan Long saying to him, I think Bob said something he shouldn't, and it's been reported. And then 5 or 6 people, including Sam and Lucy, because I remember I wanted the world to swallow me up, all turned around and looked at me. And it was just the worst feeling in the world. It really was, because I thought, fuck. And Sean Raggett then, like they looked at me and he looked across and then looked away. I was just like, oh my God. But that shows how quickly something that's either right or wrong can spread, because I'd been in the fans forum, and then we'd gone more or less straight up. We had a half-hour break for a cup of tea, straight into the room, and that's how quickly it can kind of snowball, and that's how quickly a fake story, fake news can snowball. I don't want to sound like Donald Trump, but honestly. And also the reason that I don't like it, and this is the main one, and if you're watching, and as this person's watching, I have no problem with it at all. It just gives Nick Oxbury something else to message me about. And I don't mind Nick messaging me. I like Nick, he's a great guy, but I hate it. Any truth in the Charlie Lakin rumours? Where did they come from? An EFL agent? Well, what do you think? Do you know what I mean? What do you reckon? Any truth in what was on the Daily Sport front headline? No. There we go then. So just a warning, Nick, don't message me about Charlie Lakin. So look, that's it. I'm not going on anymore about EFL agents or accounts on Twitter. Just be really careful about what news you believe and what you don't believe. Look, discussion is great, who we could sign, who we might sign, all that sort of stuff. But believing that we're looking at somebody because a sweaty 17-year-old wanting to grow his follower base beyond 500 is making stuff up in his bedroom and making his account look more accurate than it is, that's not football, and it's not the right type of speculation. It really isn't. So just don't believe them, honestly. They're having your pants down, not literally, but they're having your pants down. So I think that's it really for Lincoln City fans. Not a lot of other news. There's a little bit of Instagram stuff around. I think Dylan Duffy and somebody else is saying goodbye to Danny Mandroyu, which is interesting, really interesting. So it wouldn't surprise me if we've seen the last of Danny in a Lincoln shirt, but we shall see. Ted Bishop last said something about Lucas Jensen said something about pre-season training to him, so perhaps there's an indication he might be saying they're the sorts of rumours I can get on board with, something with a little bit of substance. Nick says, with how fragile transfers are, there's no point in dealing with it until the club announce it. Yeah, don't get me wrong, I don't want to suck the life out of the kind of the transfer rumour scene. It's just where the rumour comes from. Because if you think about it, my thought is this. If you see a transfer rumour on social media, think about where it's come from, and then think how it's got there. So, ex-agent on Twitter puts Lincoln City are interested in this player. Why? How? How's he got that rumour? What is he doing? Is he talking? Is he going for a drink every night with a whole group of other agents, like they're in some sort of big agent club? And then they're all saying to him, this is going to happen. And then he's going home and tweeting it. And then next week he's back out with a drink with them. I don't think he is. There's a potential that he still has contacts if he is an ex-agent, which I really doubt. But there's a potential if he still has contacts. But for me, there isn't any reason behind it other than to boost his own engagement. For me, you think about where it's come from. Then think if it's in a paper, for instance. So if it's in a national, if it's one of the national journalists, Pete O'Rourke and Alan Nixon, 9 times out of 10, they're dealing with clubs a lot bigger than Lincoln. They're dealing with top-level transfers. So if they get something that's Lincoln-based, usually I tend to believe or tend to think that there might be something in it. And different journalists are kind of more or less more reputable and less reputable, but a journalist is a journalist, and so you can understand why a transfer rumour comes out. Then it's the type of rumour in that respect. So if it's Lincoln City are looking at Joe Taylor, that's a very specific journalist story. I like that, and usually it's getting a little bit of a way down the line at that point, whatever the deal is. You'll see those a couple of days before it happens. If it's Lincoln City, Wycombe and Blackpool, it's what I call the rule of 3. If there's 3 clubs in there all looking at the same player, that's got to have come from an agent, because a journalist won't be in contact with somebody at Lincoln, somebody at Blackpool, somebody at Wycombe, and if they are, all 3 of those won't know what the transfer dealings at their club is, because clubs don't ring journalists and go, oh, we're looking at such and such now. Can you just put that out there so that we get so there's more interest? So it's always going to come either from the selling club or the selling club's agent. And for me, that's trying to drum up information. That's trying to drum up interest, rather. And then the final ones, which I think are the more reputable ones, and this is why it's so sad that the Echo doesn't do what it does anymore, is local media. Because I think 99% of the time, local media tend to be good. And you'll find a little snippet buried somewhere at the end of like a match report where it'll say, oh, such and such was on trial, or there's been interest from such and such in, let's say, Lincoln, there's been interest in Sean Rowan from Southampton and Chelsea. That story's come from local media. It's come then probably directly from the club. That tends to be more reputable. So if you see a story this summer, by all means, kind of, I'm not telling anyone not to discuss it. If you want to discuss ex-agent stuff, you can do as well. It might mean I have to mute, unfortunately, because I can't be doing with fake stuff. But yeah, talk about genuine transfers all day long. Talking about made-up transfers to boost engagement. Oh my God. Honestly, it's like writing a holiday review from Timbuktu. You weren't even there. Do you know what I mean? You can't have been there. It's made up. Yeah, putting a Timbuktu trip advisor on. That's what it feels like to me. Nick Gilliver. Thank you, Nick, for sticking with me, mate. Genuine question. What's happened to clubs not revealing how much players are bought for? Yeah, it's a bugbear of mine. I understand it at a time because if you're Lincoln and you're looking at, let's say we're looking at buying a boy from Blackpool. I'm not saying we are or not, but Gilbert from Blackpool. And Blackpool want 100 grand for him. And we're going, yeah, okay, yep, that seems like a fairish price. And then the next day we sell Sean Rowan for $1 million. Blackpool are then like, well, you got a bit more money. Actually, it's 150 grand we want for him now because you've got the money, you can afford it. And I think we saw that at the top level with a lot of Premier League transfers for a few years. The Andy Carroll, I can't remember that. So it was Andy Carroll moved to Liverpool, didn't he? Didn't Liverpool sell someone for 50 million and then went out and spent exactly the same amount on Andy Carroll? So yeah, really, that's probably why we now do undisclosed. What I think is that in the end of season accounts, for transparency, I think each club's transfer dealings or each player's transfer fee should be broken down because fans are stakeholders in the club, whether that's financial or not. We have a vested interest. We put our season ticket money in, and like obviously there've been times where our club have been really open about it in the end of season transfers. So we'll talk about John Akindi's fee being a total of 325,000, I think, which officially makes him the biggest purchase. So, or you should have to do it at the end of a transfer window. So you should get to the end of the transfer window and you should put then, these were what we paid for these players for transparency. I don't know, maybe that'll happen, maybe not, but I can absolutely understand why it's undisclosed at the time, because it's almost like playing poker, placing a bet and then showing what cards you've got so the others know whether to bet or stick or fold or whatever. A little bit. Right. Gaz Nicholson says, wouldn't be surprised if Danny M is leaving. Think Moylan has potential to fill that role. Yeah, I wouldn't expect us to keep Danny and Ted. I was surprised we didn't have an option on Danny's contract. I genuinely thought we did have exercise. It was a tough season for Danny, and I can't see us keeping both of them. And I think somebody a little bit further up has put there, Nick's put surprised by keeping Ted. Well, again, we haven't at the minute, so we don't know what that looks like, and we won't. It may be a cheaper deal. I mean, Ted was excellent in the last kind of 3-4 months of the season, and actually for the number of games you get out of him, the right wages, he's an asset to the club for the right money, as long as you're not having to rely all the time. And it's easy to say, well, if you can't rely on him, but it's not a game of 11 v 11 anymore. It's 16 versus 16, or however many subs you can make at once. And in that respect, then a player that you can get 90 minutes out of one week and 20 minutes out of the next week, he's an asset, because collectively very few players will play 180 minutes in a 2-game spell anyway. So reduced minutes are not a major issue for me. Right, that's me more or less done and dusted. I am going to go see if I can buy some plastic packing tubs, and then I'm going to clean the office out, hopefully to give myself a bit better recording space so I don't have to use the green screen, and I've got Lincoln pictures in the background and all that sort of stuff, which I'd really like for these lives when I'm not walking the dog. Thank you very much for watching. I understand I've been on a bit of a rant about EFL agents, but it's a beautiful day, and it was just nice to talk to you all. I hope you have a lovely weekend, and I'll catch up with you soon. Up the imps.